Good morning. I'm Pastor Steve Matthews from First Presbyterian Church here in St. Genevieve, and I just wanted to offer a special invitation for all of you to come out and visit us any Sunday morning. Our services are at 10:45, and we'd love to see you here. We have a lot of special things going on in July, and hopefully you can be here. Glad to see you today.
Give me life, O Lord, according to thy word. Accept my offerings of praise, O Lord, and teach me thy ordinances. I hold my life in my hand continually, but I do not forget thy law. The wicked have laid a snare for me, but I do not stray from thy precepts. Thy testimonies are my heritage forever. Yea, they are the joy of my heart. I incline my heart to perform thy statutes forever to the end. Our second scripture reading is from Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9 and 18 through 23. And that can be found on page 846 in your Bible. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. And great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat there. And the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they had not much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. When the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell upon thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell in good soil, and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is he who hears the word, but cares for the word, and the delight in riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what was sown on good soil, this is he who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, and in another 60, and in another 30. This is the word of the Lord. Please join in singing the first verse of Jesus Loves Me as our children come forward for a time of children. Jesus loves me, my son.
Ride a bike, okay, that's a very good thing to do. I do that. What else? What kind of thing do you do? What? Swim, yeah, I love to swim in July. Any other kind of things you guys like to do? Sports, all kinds of sports going on, playing some baseball, seeing a picture around, doing some of that, yeah. Okay, so all kinds of things to do in July. I like to do a lot of things in July, particularly when I was your age. A lot of my things that I would do in July revolved around water. We'd get hoses and we'd have wars with hoses. You ever done that with your friends or your brother or whatever? You know, shoot each other with hoses. We used to love to fill up water balloons, fill balloons with water, you know. You could have, it's a lot better than a snowball fight. You know, you have water balloon fights, you know, you make your little forts and fight back and forth. Not that I want to give them any ideas or anything. I'm just telling you some things that, that I used to do. We used to make our own slip and slides too before they actually had those things you could buy. You know, we would just get a little hill and let the grass get a little high and let that way down and get all muddy. My grandpa used to yell at the lawn about tearing out this grass. But anyway, there's a lot of things we like to do. I always like to do in July. It's a really neat month. Enjoying the hot weather. Did you get out yesterday? Enjoy that weather yesterday. 95, 97 degrees, high humidity. It's supposed to be really nice this week, though. Some really nice days, so you need to get out and have a lot of fun with that. But one of the things I always remember about July that's a memory that I've had since I was even younger than you guys. One of the things I really like to do was go out into my grandfather's garden. And later on, I would go out into my dad's garden. And I would find corn on the stalk and just tear off a fresh piece of corn, or 2 or 3 of them. And I'd either take them in and have my mom cook them, or I'd just peel them down and just eat them. You know, just eat the corn. You ever do that? Have you ever done that before? You know, I'll try that sometime, you know. It's pretty neat. I mean, I love corn. You guys like corn? Do you like corn? Like corn on the cob? Yeah. Did you really have it cooked, maybe? Yeah. I enjoy it cooked also. So this year, my dad's gone. My grandfather's been gone for a long time. I can't go out in their gardens and get a good piece of corn. So I thought I'd go to the store and get me some nice corn on the cob. Does this look really like good stuff to you? You know, it's the best I can find in the store. You know, it doesn't look too bad, but it's just not the same as going out there in the garden or in the field yourself and pulling a few ears off the stalks. You know, it's just not the same when you get to the store. So I thought about that, and I thought about that, and I thought, wow, you know, my dad's not around to plant a garden, my grandmother's not around to plant a garden, so, you know, what's to keep me from getting some seeds, corn seeds, right? And put some seeds out and grow my own corn. You know, why shouldn't I do that? You think that's a good idea? Well, you know, so I found some corn seeds. You know, and I live in St. Louis. Where am I going to, you know, put corn seeds out in St. Louis? And, you know, even if they started growing there in St. Louis, somebody's going to come along and grab them before I can even get there. So, you know, I thought, wow, I come down here to St. Genevieve every week. You know? So I'm just bringing corn seeds with me to St. Genevieve. And you know what? I have some corn, so I'm just going to grab a few seeds out. So I'll put some over here. Maybe I'll put some down here, and maybe over here, those few seeds. And then, you know, maybe in a few weeks, I'll come in here and I can pick my own corn, right? No? Oh, I need to, I'll have to put some water on it though, right? I think you're supposed to put water on the seeds. Would that be all right? Well, I've got seeds. Look, a lot of them right over here where I usually am. Nobody else is usually over here. That's a good spot, you know. That's sort of on the side over here, so you can still walk up through here. You know, maybe if I wait till August, come back in August, then there'll be some corn right here that have grown up and I can do that. No? Why not?
Does there have to be soil?
There has to be soil. Oh yeah, there's no soil here. I just threw this stuff out here on the carpet, actually. You don't think the carpet's too good place for that, for the seeds to go out, whatever. Well, you know, you're right. I'm pretty sure, from what I remember from my dad's gardens and from my grandfather's gardens, that probably I'm not going to get any corn growing from, even though these are actually corn seeds, even though the best I can find are the popcorn seeds, but, you know, whatever. I just threw some out here. They're not going to grow here, are they? They're not going to grow at all. If I really want to grow some corn, I'm going to have to find some decent soil, like you were saying. I have to check it. I'm going to have to find some soil and go plant it. I'm going to have to tend to it, maybe water it if it doesn't rain enough. Plant it at the right time, because if I plant it now, any of you that have gardens or whatever know, if I try to plant some corn right now, probably not going to get any ears of corn this year, am I? That's just not going to happen. I'm going to end up back at the store to try to find my corn. So there's a lot of things that go into growing corn. But you know, the fact that I've got some seeds here and I just threw some out, you know, doesn't mean that I'm going to get a harvest of corn, does it? It's just not going to happen. You guys are smart enough to know. I'm not going to be able to come back here in August and pull any ears of corn out. It's just not going to happen. We heard a story from the Bible this morning about this sower that goes out and he sows some seeds in all over the place. Nicole just read it just a minute ago if you were listening. Now, he sows some seeds in some good soil. He does that. But he also sows some seeds in some other places. Did you hear where else he threw some of these seeds out? Where did this sower throw some seeds out? He threw some out in some rocky soil, like it was all rocks and whatever. You think that's a good place to grow anything? Probably not really. It's not going to grow as well. He threw some out where there's a bunch of thorns and stuff already growing. Think that's going to work very well? No. And he threw some out on this beaten path. It's just like a highway, like a road that's beaten down. Think that's a good place to throw your seeds out to grow corn? No? No, but he still, his sower threw them out there, didn't he? threw them out there. And in this story, even though Jesus tells us that, to think of ourselves as the soil a little bit, what I'm going to be talking about here is thinking about God as the sower. And there's some days that we have some pretty rocky, tough days where we don't feel too good. There's some days where there's a lot of people giving us a lot of problems. It's like thorny days that are coming and sticking us, and we just don't like to hear what's going on and whatever. And there's some pretty rough days and some hard beaten days that we have where we just don't feel real good. But even on those days, God continues to sow His love and His grace to us. God is still there offering His love to us, regardless of what kind of day we have, regardless of what kind of soil we may see ourselves as being. Now, there's some days like the day that you guys are here in church and you're ready to listen and pay attention and hear the story and learn some things about God. And so you're being the rich soil today. You're sitting here and listening to me talk right now. And that's great. God is giving you His love right now as well. But even on those days when we don't feel like listening, and when that soil is rocky, and when that soil, we don't think it would grow anything at all, God's love is still there for us. And we need to remember that part of what this parable is all about as well. But some days we don't have those great days. Some days we have real tough days, real hard days. And we need to remember that God is going to continue to sow His love and His grace to us, regardless of what kind of day that we're going to have. So, before you leave here this morning, I got something to remind you of that. It's not really corn. You know what this is? You usually don't see it except you're on Halloween, right? What is this? Candy corn. You don't like this one, right? It's just sweet and sticky and, whatever. But I've got some candy corn. If you guys want to take a package of candy corn with you, if you decide to eat this or to share it with somebody around you, whatever, remember that God is always sowing His love and His joy and His grace to us, regardless of what kind of soil we may be. And that we're called to try to be the best person that we can be and try to return God's love to other people. And that's something I'll also continue to talk about this day. Let's close with a word of prayer. Let's stand up. Take hands even with your little packages of time. Shall we pray? Dear God, thank you for this day. Thank you for summertime. Thank you for your love that you always give to us. Amen. Okay. Have a good week this week, guys. Try to find some fresh corn. Don't just go out and pick it without asking permission. Which I thought about doing this morning as I passed many corn fields. Today is the first message that I'm going to be sharing with you that comes from Matthew 13. Matthew 13 has several parables in it. It's just a litany of 7 or 8 parables in a row, and they're all pretty neat little stories, vignettes, parables that Jesus is sharing and trying to get a message across to us with. And then, unusually for Jesus, at the end of Matthew, as we heard read a part of this morning, He then explains a few of these parables. He actually says, hey, this is what this parable means. Well, I'm going to take, with this parable of the sower, the very first parable that we find in Matthew 13, I'm going to take a little different view than what Jesus actually said about this parable. I agree that what Jesus had to say was very important, and I'm going to talk about that as well. But in this message, I'm going to look at the parable of the sower from a little different perspective than what Jesus actually said in His own words at the end of the 13th chapter of Matthew. So I've entitled this message, The Parable of the Sower Revisited, because we're going to revisit it. And I'm going to see if I can convince you that maybe we can learn even further than what Jesus said there in His words about this particular parable. So I was studying this parable the last couple of weeks, and I was thinking about it and considering it, and a story came to mind. Now this is a different story, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to say, we're here in St. Genevieve, right here on the river, one of God's wonderful aspects of creation. This mighty river that this city sits on, right here, St. Genevieve, Missouri. Now, most of you, being from here, or at least living in this area right now, would probably say, if you're asked to identify outside of our state anyway, where St. Genevieve is located, you would say, well, it's on the river, but you would probably say it's in the southern part of the state of Missouri. Would you say that? Would you say we're in the southern part here of Missouri, St. Genevieve? I got a few people nodding. Tom back there, he'll disagree with anything I said. We're south of St. Louis. St. Louis is sort of seen to be the center, so we're the southern part, of the state. And geographically, that's correct. This is southern Missouri. But, as many of you know, I grew up and lived for part of my life 100 miles south of here in Poplar Bluff. And in Poplar Bluff, when we talked about southern Missouri, we weren't even talking about Poplar Bluff. We were talking about the Boot Heel. The Boot Heel. That was southern Missouri. I mean, that's as far south as you can go in the state. Poplar Bluff is only 10 miles from the Arkansas line, but it's only 13 miles if you go just a little bit to the southeast to the Boot Heel from Poplar Bluff. And then you can go even a lot further south if you keep going down through the Boot Heel. I can tell you lots of stories about the Boot Heel, and I'm going to tell you one here in just a second. But the Boot Heel is a different kind of place in Missouri. It's an entity all to itself. I mean, it's a separate area, and really in a way, it's a wonderful place down there. I mean, they grow some of the biggest watermelons, some of the biggest cantaloupes, some of the best rice, some of the best and biggest cotton plants, some of the biggest mosquitoes that you've ever seen down in that part of the state, in what sometimes is referred to still as Swamp East Missouri. Because it used to all be a swamp before it was drained out and used for agriculture and whatever. And I can tell you all kinds of things. Like the peach capital of the world is down there in southeast and Swamp East Missouri. I mean, they grow peaches by the tons down there. And I spent many times down in there picking peaches, going down to the peach fields and going to the orchards and picking peaches down there. I love peaches, and I went down. I didn't go down there and pick much corn, but I did go and we'd pick out our watermelons. We'd go down and pick out our cantaloupes and whatever, and pick those right out of the fields. And I mean, there's nothing better than doing that. I mean, it's an amazing part of the world, but it is also a very impoverished and poor area of the country, not just of this state, but of the entire country, the entire United States as well. And you can go out there amongst all those fields, and you can drive up into a little community, if you want to call it that. It's all these shacks that would actually make trailers look like palaces almost. I mean, the kinds of shacks that some people live in down in the Boot Heel area. It's a very impoverished area, so there's a lot of diversity of life that you see down there in the Boot Heel. And in a lot of ways, it's wonderful and to be enjoyed, but it's very sad in a lot of ways as well. So I was reading a story. It's actually a book about a young man who was traveling around the country this past year. And one of the stories, a very short story in this particular book, caught my eye, because this traveling aspect of the story took place in Kennett, Missouri. Kennett, Missouri. As soon as I saw that, that's my father-in-law's hometown. It's also Cheryl Crow's hometown, but that's a story for another day. But Kennett is in the Boot Heel, and it's my father-in-law's hometown. That's where he was born and raised. I visited there many times. I used to play basketball against Kennett Tigers down there. And so when I saw Kennett, I saw this story about Kennett, I immediately perked up and I read it very closely. So this is not my experience, but it's an experience that I read about not very long ago. And it seems that there was a young man who had decided that he wanted to travel and see the United States of America. But he wasn't traveling to all the great landmarks that he could find around the country, as many tourists do. He wanted to see what America was really like. And so he spent almost 2 years traveling around the country, and he wrote a book about his experiences. And at one point, he found himself traveling into the Boot Heel of southern Missouri. And he went to the small town of Kennett, Missouri. And he went and he visited with people there, and he decided to spend a few nights there, and he found a small hotel on the outskirts of town, just on the edge of the town there. And one evening he was going back to the motel, and there was a small gas station there next to the motel. And he pulled into the gas station, and he filled his car up with gas, and he went in to pay for his gas inside the gas station. He went over to the cashier, and just behind the counter there was an old black gentleman that was sitting in a chair, had his chair tipped up against the wall. Tipped up against the wall. And he was just looking out the big plate glass window there at the fields, at the rice fields, the cotton fields that were surrounding that area there. And this young man walked in, and as was his custom, he liked to talk to people and greet people and whatever. And he saw the man sitting back there, and he said, "Hello, it's a nice evening, isn't it?" And the older gentleman said to the young man, he said, "Hello, boss." He was called him boss for whatever reason. He said, "Hello, boss." The young man looked at him for a minute, and he was taking out his credit card to pay for his gas and whatever. And the old man started talking. And he pointed out and he said, 40 cents a day, boss. 40 cents a day. I worked them fields right out there for 40 cents a day. 40 cents a day. Boss, don't you think I was worth more than 40 cents a day? But I worked them fields out there for 40 cents a day. The young man just looked at him and he sort of nodded. He wasn't sure what to say. And as he was standing there, the old man reached into his pocket and he took out a couple of crumpled up bills, and a couple of $1 bills, and he looked down for a minute and he thought about it and he said, 5 days of my life, 40 cents a day, $2. 5 days, that's a week of my life, boss. A week of my life, $2. We're not worth more than that, boss. We're not worth more than that today, boss. 40 cents a day. Working in the field, boss. That's a week, $2. The young man just stared at the old man, unusual for him, and a complete loss for words. He didn't know what to say. All these thoughts are going through his mind, as they're probably going through your mind right now. These thoughts, the impressions of this man and his life, and working in those fields most all of his life, not making anything hardly at all for doing that. And the man's saying, 40 cents a day. What is my life worth? The young man never came up with anything to say to that man. He didn't know how to respond to it. He finished paying for his gas and he walked out and left. But he never forgot that man and what he said to him that evening there on the outskirts of Kent, Missouri. And you always wonder, what is a human life worth? What is it worth? Shall we pray? Gracious God, may the words of my lips and the meditations of our hearts and minds be acceptable in thy sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Today's gospel reading from Matthew, this parable of the sower, it really made me think about the ground on which that black man from Kent, Missouri has walked. You know, I suspect that he often walked the hard, packed path of prejudice, a path where not much grows, where life and opportunities are just too quickly snatched away. I'll bet he knew what it was like to live between a rock and a hard place. One of my dad's favorite sayings. On the rocky ground, life withers because you can't put down roots. There's no security, there's no stability, and the sun just scorches you. That man surely must have walked amongst the thorns of violence, of fear, of anger, and of poverty. I have no doubt that those thorns wrapped themselves around him and his family, choking away dignity and security and trust. I hope that the best soil that man walked through was not the 40 cents a day soil that he plowed. I hope he stood in the dark, rich soil that nourished life and love and hope, the soil that only God provides. But here we are, this morning in St. Genevieve, Missouri, and we may not have plowed fields for 40 cents a day, but we all know the different landscapes of life of which Jesus speaks in this parable. We know the beaten path of life. We've stumbled through the rocky patches of life. We've been scratched and cut by the thorns of life. And we've also planted our roots deep in the sacred soil of life that feeds and grows us to become a harvest. A harvest in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. You know, Jesus is not just describing different types of soil or circumstances of life. He's describing a human being's inner geography. These are the various landscapes of the human heart. We've met these in others, and we've discovered them in ourselves during our lifetime. We're rarely just one type of soil. We're all four of these types of soil. The four soils are descriptive of how we live and relate to others and to God. Jesus' interpretation of this parable, when he tells what happens to the seeds, describes the consequences of each kind of life, depending on where we are in our life at that time. And at one level, at this level, the parable invites us to be self-reflective and to examine the kind of life that we are living. And that's important work. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it's an important way to listen and to hear this parable. I think that's how we most often use it, because that's what Jesus talked about himself later on in Matthew 13. But sometimes that can blind us from seeing other perspectives of this parable as well. I agree that we live today in a world that thrives on competition, on comparison, on judgment, if you will. So we reduce this parable to the one obvious question: what kind of dirt are we? What kind of dirt are we? Are we the beaten dirt? Are we the rocky soil? Are we the thorny path? Are we the good soil? So that's how we think about this parable, most obviously. But when we do that, we put ourselves at the center of this parable. And we push the sower into the background. Even though this parable is most commonly known as the parable of the sower. The parable of the sower. The what kind of dirt are we question is not the only way to read this parable. That question sometimes can distract us from other ways of reading and understanding this parable. And that's the difficulty and the beauty of parables. They are open to differing interpretations. We tend to read and try to understand parables through the lenses of our own world and our own worldview. That's the only way that we can really look at anything, through our own lens. The result is that sometimes we see, but we do not understand. We do not perceive everything that we could see here. And I think this parable is a perfect example. If you really think about it, think about what I said to the guys up here this morning, this parable doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A farmer goes out and sows seed on a public pathway, on rocky ground, on ground where thorns are growing up in bushes. Would a farmer do that? You know, that's wasteful. That's inefficient. That's ineffective. It's bad farming, isn't it? Isn't that bad farming? You're not going to sow your seeds, on those places. The sower is not much of a farmer in this parable. You can't plant seeds among the rocks or the thorns or on a path, or up here in the front of the church, and then act surprised or astounded when nothing grows. Can you? You can't. The story that Jesus tells in this parable just simply doesn't seem to fit the real world, if you think about it. And I think if we recognize that, that's the beginning of understanding this parable in a revisited way. A revisited Parables offer us a different perspective, a new way to try to see things, to try to look at things. They give us a glimpse into God's world and what God is like. That's why Jesus told and spoke in parables, to try to give us a glimpse into what God's world is like. Parables can sort of heal our ears and our eyes so that we might hear and understand God better, see and perceive and feel God more relevantly in our own lives. Parables are not meant to test human intelligence. They are kernels of grace. Kernels of grace. And they test our heart's willingness to surrender to and to be enveloped by the always surprising generosity of God. The surprising generosity of God. I think that's exactly what the parable of the sower reveals. As different as the four soils are, they all hold two things in common: seeds and the sower. The sower sows seeds into all four of the different kinds of soils. The sower sows those seeds with equal toil, with equal hope, and equal generosity. Those seeds go everywhere, to all those different kinds of soils. There is no soil left unsown. The sower sows these seeds without evaluation of the soil's quality or the soil's potential. Why else would he put it on the path? Or why else would he put it over amongst the thorns or in the rocky soil? The sower's not paying any attention to that. No ground is declared undeserving of the sower's seeds. Taken in this sense, this parable is not about the quality of the dirt. It's about the quality of God, the divine sower. We want to judge what kind of dirt we are when we look at this parable. God simply wants to sow God's life, God's seed of joy, God's seed of love in our lives, in all parts of our lives, in all times of our lives. Whether we are 40 cents a day soil, or $400 a day soil, or $4 million a day soil, we are sown with the seeds of God's love. No soil, no life, no person is left unsown by God's love and God's grace. Seeds here, seeds there, seeds everything, everywhere in this parable. Just seems like poor planning if you think of it as a farmer. And given today's economy, it's just wasteful. Seeds going everywhere. By today's farming practices, it's totally inefficient. With the cost of seeds and time spent on sowing, you know it's not going to be profitable if you do that. These are not, however, the sower's concerns. They're our concerns. But thankfully, this parable is about God's faithfulness. It's not about farming. It's not really about soil quality or how things work in this world. In the sower's world, in God's world, wastefulness can give way to hope. In God's world, inefficiency can give way to love. And in God's world, profitability can give way to generosity. Every part of your life has been sown with the seeds of God's love. And we know what happens to seeds. Given the right conditions, apple seeds can become apples. Given the right conditions, peach seeds can become peaches. Given the right conditions, rice seeds become rice. And given the right conditions, God's seeds become God-like actions, and God-like words, and God-like deeds through you in your life. If you will receive God's seeds of love and grace and joy and hope. Here then, the parable of the sower revisited. Our God Shall we pray? Awesome God, we give you thanks for the seeds of love and grace sown in our lives every day. On those rocky days, on those difficult and thorny days, on those days when we actually turn our backs on you, you are still there, offering us hope and love and joy. And for that we thank you, Almighty God. Amen. Let us now respond to the word this morning by rising, either in body or in spirit, and singing together our hymn of response, number 690. He leadeth me. Shall we rise? Let us now join together as a fellowship of faith, a Christian community, in repeating our affirmation of faith, the Apostles' Creed, which you find in your bulletin this morning. I believe in God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. He descended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Ghost, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen. God the sower sows his seeds of love, sows his seeds of joy, and all of his blessings to us throughout our lives. And in return, we're asked to share a portion of those blessings that we receive from God with others. Do so generously now as the ushers come forward to collect our tithes and our offerings. Thank you. hear you knocking at our door. We ask now that you use this response to that knock to further your kingdom throughout this world. In your name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. As we prepare now to turn to our God in prayer, let us pause for just a moment of silence as we consider those who are in need this day. Shall we pray? Gracious God, as we share in the abundance of this land, we recognize that there are so many in our world who are hurting and who are in need. There is so much rocky soil, so many thorny roads. There are difficult beaten paths that so many of your children have to endure. Please ease their burdens this day. May your love and grace descend upon those troubled in Ukraine, on those hurting in Syria and Iraq and Jordan, on those who are suffering in Israel and in Palestine, on those who are starving in Asia and Africa, and on our own borders and in our own cities. And for our friends and family members who are hurting and who are in need this day, may your Spirit also comfort them and assist them in their difficult days. Be with us now, our God, as we, your children, repeat together the prayer Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. As we prepare to gather ourselves to leave this place this day, let us rise one last time, leader and body or spirit, and sing together our closing hymn, number 564, Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Shall we rise?
Service
closer walk with God and walk beside Jesus throughout our lives and follow His ways. It's not always easy to do. And sometimes that path is tough, and it's rocky, and it's thorny, and it's beaten down. But that's what we're called to do, is to walk the way that Jesus walked. And to be assured that regardless of how thorny, how difficult that road may seem, we need to remember that God is always there. God is right there above us. God is right here below us. God follows along right behind us. God even goes before us. God stands right beside us. And most importantly of all, on those most difficult of all days, we need to remember that God is right here inside us as well. Go in peace this day. Amen.
Channels 7 and 98 TV and web broadcasting are made possible through contributions and donations from viewers like you. Thank you for your support.